Welcome back to the Product Marketing Festival. As we prepare to unleash another exciting session, I just want to say a massive thank you to our partners, sponsors, you, and our ensemble of speakers and participants for helping us bring this event to life. I hope you are finding today's sessions insightful, and I want to remind you that the learnings don't stop here. If you haven't already, you can become a PMA member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, mentors, our entire back catalogue of event content, and much, much more. What's more, you can continue the conversation in the PMA's Slack community. If you aren't already a member, then hop on over and join the discussions today. And remember, this is your chance to get involved. Please share your feedback and questions in the comments section for our speakers to answer. It really is that simple. Let's resume the sessions. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Product Marketing Festival. Next we have our first live session of today. I am delighted to welcome Katie Samuelson from Saltmine to the stage. Just before I do, as it is a live session, I want to remind you that we will be hosting a Q&A at the end of the session. So as the presentation progresses, feel free to add your questions and comments in the chat box and I'll be putting them to Katie after her talk. So now welcome Katie, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Rose. Really excited to be with you all today. So I'll dive in here, but today we're going to talk about how you can thrive using competitive intelligence in 2021. So quick agenda. As I mentioned, really excited to be joining you today. Just wanted to give you a quick preview of some of the topics that we'll be covering. So I'll do a brief intro on my background and why that's relevant. We'll talk about some context and dive into some of the changes that we've seen in the marketplace today and why that sets the stage for competitive intelligence. And then we'll walk through steps on how to create a competitive intelligence strategy. And lastly, we'll cover some best practices on competitive intelligence that I've learned along the way. Would love to share with you all. So let's dive in. So as you guys know, my name's Katie. I currently serve as the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Saltmine. I have a passion for product marketing and I've been at a number of exciting startups over the course of a number of years. I like to say my special sauce is in product marketing is both on the go-to-market side, but also on competitive intelligence. And I really have a number of great and exciting, background and experience in being able to share that with you all. I find that with competitive intelligence, you can drive immense impact and have huge results in both small and large businesses. I've worked at a number of B2B tech SaaS startups, including Toast, Robin, and Stratex, and I'll talk about some of those experiences that I've encountered at the times of those companies. But first, as I mentioned, I work at a company called Saltmine. So Saltmine is really quick, a cloud-based platform that integrates key workplace data and activates this data via an integrated tool set for workplace analytics, planning, and design. It's really essential for the workplace right now as we see this transition to, this sort of new way of working. I'll touch on why this is an important use case a little bit later, but note that we've really been leaning into market and competitive research, and it's going to play a huge role for us in 2021 and beyond as we really define how we position ourselves in the market. But now let's discuss some context on why competitive intelligence is important today. So going through some of the basics, let's talk about some of the recent trends we've seen as a result of the global pandemic and how they relate. We know that we're in the midst of a large market shift, which has been brought on through unexpected change as a result of COVID-19. Everyone likes to talk about COVID-19, but COVID has also had this fast-moving and unexpected impact for businesses and teams, and many of them were unfortunately unprepared. However, through learning and being able to adapt, businesses actually have a huge opportunity to turn disruption into their advantage. So industries have already begun to do this, with the banking industry beginning to optimize digital decision-making like automated underwriting, the auto industry starting to focus on driverless cars or ride sharing, or restaurants moving towards innovation through takeaway and drive-through operations. Businesses have begun to really reimagine operations and identify new opportunities. So as has been the case competitive insights and intelligence have really played a critical role for companies in understanding how to pivot based off of consumer needs. So COVID, really has given a understanding for us to know that in this disruption, we need to better understand distinctive patterns during, and after the pandemic, for, related to economic recessions, but market performance with many interconnected factors at play will likely continue to fluctuate. So now is the time for businesses to seek out and seize opportunities that emerge in the recovery. This includes conducting analysis and review of data and insights learned from the pandemic, and then using those to prioritize actions to enhance business value today and build strategic resilience for tomorrow. So businesses that take these next steps will now be placed in an opportunity to capitalize more effectively on opportunities rising in this post-COVID world. So let's review some initial trends that we've seen as a result of analysis done by Deloitte really recently. So as I just mentioned, Deloitte published a great white paper on some of the trends that have been induced by COVID. And some of the examples of what they found are across a number of different studies and research, but really have emerged from this sort of change in the market. So the first one is this concept of presence-free living. So when we think about how many digital alternatives have emerged as a result of sort of this, transition to remote work, as a result of this, there have been the sort of opportunity, the need to be physically in person for, work and in different industries has really been challenged. So businesses saw that the lack of physical presence was not necessarily needed to be productive and achieve results. And this will definitely continue to impact consumer and customer trends for both products and services. So consumers have also begun to explore and adapt new ways of interacting with one another socially, now through video calls like this one, LinkedIn, Facebook, and in fact, it's becoming a preferred way of interacting for many. So this quote unquote increase in the digital skill set paves the way to digitize many interactions in the future. And this will benefit both consumers and companies that really lean into this. And then in this market, speed of execution and creativity are more critical now than ever. So this fast changing context yields to those who are able to pivot, reinvent, or adapt by offering digital services or online platforms. So organizations and practices that are agile and really can dive into what has traditionally been done in the technology sector have yielded the opportunity to push forward speed to market and providing additional value for organizations. So truly, we're starting to see this pivot in other different sectors and industries. But to better understand how we can disrupt and continue to evolve as businesses, products, services, we need intelligence. So intelligence matters and will continue to be a focus for businesses in 2021. Competitive intelligence, really what I mean here, as we think about the sort of holistic view of what intelligence means, there's a couple of different types, but really diving into sort of the market research that helps identify trends and rivals. Having a good understanding of both the market, industry, and competition is going to be crucial and really an effective way of understanding how to evolve and adapt and help us become more competitive. This can allow businesses to essentially crystallize the market positioning in terms of value proposition and differentiators, estimate barriers to entry, identify baseline consumer expectations, find market gaps and opportunities for improvement, and then uncover new potential. Plus, competitive intelligence oftentimes benefits the whole business. So sales want to win competitive deals, marketers want to create positioning, product managers want to create differentiated roadmaps, customer support wants to improve retention, and leaders want to mitigate risk and long-term competitive advantages. So good news is it's on the rise outside of the context of COVID, which makes it perfect mix of why we should dive in today. So as I mentioned, what's really interesting is that competitive intelligence is on the rise for both small and large organizations. And here's some data points that really speak to the vested interest companies have in CI. So 57% of businesses have shared that they have teams made up of 2 or more. So these are large enterprise companies, but this number continues to rise every year. And this is done from a study in 2021 that was shared out with a number of folks in PMA. And then 48% of businesses say their industry has gotten more competitive within the last several years. So again, this number continues to rise and is one that we have continued to see in different studies and reports over the course of the last few years. And then in spite of the COVID pandemic, the vast majority of businesses say not only say their industry has gotten more competitive, but a wide margin of these companies, 61%, have indicated competitive intelligence helps to directly impact revenue as a result of investing in this area of the business, which again continues to rise from previous years. So it's not all about the money or the people. Another really important factor in CI is having revenue impact, but also having the foundational efforts put into the competitive intelligence program. So organizations that stay ahead of fast changing markets and are able to deploy competitive intelligence are able to really quickly and effectively dive into digital transformation and optimize their business as a result. So competitive intelligence can empower business leaders to stay informed so they can lead their markets and their products and services to win. And we've really found here from a number of data points that the ROI of CI is real. Another sort of data point here is 9 out of 10 businesses find that they get quantitative business benefits from CI, with 52% citing a large difference in sort of return on investment. So what are some of the other benefits that we see from competitive insights? So it should be viewed as a crucial element when building a business strategy. Understanding motivations and behaviors helps shape things like product development, pricing, positioning, and more. The key is really to identify challenges, advantages, and white spaces to build strategic competitive differentiation. But it's impossible to differentiate yourself without having visibility into those activities. So there's a number of ways that you can do that, which we'll talk about shortly here. But the reasons why that businesses should invest today and some of the benefits, as I've called out on a couple different slides, are, for starters, gathering competitive insights can give you that competitive advantage and help you gain better positioning in the marketplace. So this allows you to create things like targeted campaigns that really resonate with your buyer. Gathering intelligence can also help you better understand both your customer and your competitors' behavior, so you can be ready to act and have those predictions on hand. Not only does it allow you to better understand other players in the space, it allows you to find opportunities that can inform sales to win more deals, increase win rate, or find new opportunities for growth. And then lastly, you can enable your business to make more informed choices and strategic decisions with informed confidence. So while these insights can be beneficial no matter what stage you're in, I wanted to go through a couple of examples of really when competitive intelligence should be a priority for businesses and why this comes into the fold as we look at sort of the changes in the market in 2021 and beyond. So a good example is when the market's oversaturated or crowded. In a crowded market, differentiating your product prior to a launch or taking it to market is necessary to drive business. So asking things like, is your product more affordable? What is the efficacy? Is it easier for customers to use? Through competitive insights, you can actually identify the gaps in what exists and understand how you can position yourself to stand out from the crowd. So gaining insights about trends, competitors, challenges, and opportunities, and then working to analyze them is key in gaining market share and differentiation from your product from the competition. Another example, when you would want to get involved and really focus on competitive intelligence, is when there are only a few major competitors in the market. So let's say a competitor just beat you to market, but your product is superior. Competitive intelligence can reveal details about that current product on the market, its characteristics, its appeal, and the areas where you can really let your product shine. In short, it gives you the information you need to be a fast follower and develop a plan to take some of that market share. And it's not just useful for understanding the other players in the market, it can reveal what competitors know about you. If they've been doing their due diligence, which we hope that everyone is able to invest in that, but maybe not. Your competitors may have been watching you on, the scene for a number of years. So they might be tracking your, press, your website, et cetera. Again, we'll talk about a few examples of those in a minute here. A third example of when you would want to invest in competitive intelligence is when a new competitor is entering the market. So if you're already established within the market, a new product entering the space can be a threat to market share. In response, you want to adapt your strategy in defense. That can mean shifting messaging, heavier marketing push, or a shift in pricing. Example number 4 is when you're allocating dollars or seeking additional budget. It's for small companies or those that are in the startup world, it can be difficult to understand, how to divide budget and get the most out of your impact. Looking at other examples or what competitors are doing in the space can give a good, use case for really what to invest in. When you're expanding into new markets, that's a really great fifth example for those who are launching new products in the market that have no competitors. Diving into competitive research is really going to be a huge win for how you take this new product market. You can look at what launches similar companies have done, not that don't have the same product, but what have they done and what are some best practices. And it also prevents you from not necessarily reinventing the wheel. And then the last use case that we'll talk a little bit about in a second here is this sort of developing an ongoing revision to positioning and really understanding your competitive differentiation in the market. And that is definitely one that you want to nail as you take new products to market or evolve your product market suite. Okay, so some examples of industries that really utilize competitive intelligence well today. A lot of us, I'm sure, here today are in tech. I think we have adapted competitive intelligence pretty well. We've used it to disrupt markets and really evolve products and features and functionality that we build. Whereas traditional companies or those in a little bit more of a corporate environment might have higher budgets, it can be a little bit more challenging at times to be nimble and focus on niche segment markets to really move fast. Good examples of this are Airbnb, how they were able to leverage technology through socio-demographic change and then insights to disrupt the industry. Travel industry is another one that's a little bit of a different use case on how they use competitive intelligence, but they actually use it often, right? So every day they're comparing pricing based off several pieces of external information. And a lot of that is based off of how their competitors are pricing to make sure that they're staying competitive, but also making sure that they're continuing to drive demand. Okay, so now that we've talked about some context on why competitive intelligence is important, let's walk through how you can create a competitive intelligence program and strategy in a few steps. So remember, as we've seen before, we now have access to more data and we're shifting towards the digital landscape, which is great because now more than ever, you can create a strategy and program with minimal resources. Whether or not you have the funds or starting with a small team, you can start from small and evolve. The competitors you track and types of intelligence you gather will be determined in part by specific goals towards which you and your stakeholders are working on. So you want to start with objectives and really define these as you dig in. To kick it off, you'll want to define the business problem and then start to really understand your strategic direction for this research. Some of the common reasons might include understanding ways to differentiate, how you fare against competition, or some of the ones I mentioned previously. And once you have identified goals and objectives, you can dig into research. So you'll want to collect and organize data through focus groups and surveys, trade associations, benchmarking, win-loss data. Really, you want to understand your market and how you rank stack in the space. And then you'll want to analyze and interpret the data through things like SWOT analysis and identify key themes. Lastly, you'll want to create resources and disseminate to various stakeholders across channel, which we'll talk about momentarily. And really, the goal is to continue to evolve and monitor your competitors. So it's not a one-stop and I'm done type mentality. You want to make sure you're continuing to build on an ongoing basis. So as I mentioned previously, an important aspect of building out a CI program is identifying your competitive profiles. There's a number of different types of competition, but you'll typically find top competitors fall into indirect and direct competition. So you want to make sure that you're keeping a pulse on both of those, as they can, an indirect competitor can easily, tap into a space that directly competes with your product. So good ways to evaluate direct competition is to, analyze search engine results, know brands your target buyers use or mentioned, and then talking to your sales team. Direct competitors are oftentimes easy to notice, but indirect competition might be a little bit trickier to identify and evolve. So wanting to make sure that you, again, have a good pulse on both of those is really critical as trends emerge. It's also important to have a clear understanding of your strategic direction. So you want to work towards a shared mission by using questions to evaluate the competitive landscape and having a key understanding of the type of analysis you want to complete. And then you'll want to define metrics and key performance indicators for success. So a really interesting, stat here is that defining, key performance indicators and distributing to various channels plays a huge role in whether or not competitive intelligence impacts revenue. So many have found that they reported an increase in revenue as a result of having, defined KPIs and metrics for success. So as I mentioned earlier, a second step in this process is to collect and organize data. There's tons and tons of ways to collect and organize and really start your analysis. Some of my favorites include win-loss interviews, creating a cross-functional competitive insights team, sitting in on sales calls, and using tactics like focus groups, surveys, and interviews. You'll also want to dive into the internet at your disposal. Really, that's a great pro tip in a way that, many can get, huge bang for their buck in terms of being able to just see what's out there on the web. So you can look at online reviews, press releases, reviewing, social media, Google Alerts. There's tons of opportunities to dig into the internet and use that to your advantage. And then lastly, you'll want to compile a SWOT analysis for each competitor that covers a broad range of areas, including brand positioning, website, customer experience. And this is really going to be an example, a sort of framework for how you develop a competitor profile. So then you'll want to review and analyze your data. Competitive analysis should be used to essentially create your competitive differentiation strategy and really distinguish your offering or product from others in the market. So you want to identify your competitive advantage. You want to create your competitive profile, which, as I mentioned, is a result of your SWOT analysis, and then start to consolidate key themes and trends that give, whether it's the sales team or the marketing team or leadership, a way to really unpack that information and see, how you want to provide recommendations or next steps for incorporating that information into the fold. So I really like to use battle cards when delivering a full profile, as I've seen those to be incredibly effective. And they tend to be a really good snapshot of essentially, what to look for and how to, target yourselves against a specific competitor. So also, one of the key aspects of, competitive intelligence is to make sure that you're incorporating and disseminating that information to the right parties and stakeholders. So it's one of the most important aspects of a competitive intelligence program. And businesses that use, communication channels frequently were have been more likely to report revenue increases than those who don't use any channels at all. So businesses that are investing in sort of this continuous education for key stakeholders is really critical. So when you're preparing, and figuring out what is the format for dissemination, you'll want to prepare key takeaways, share with your audience, and really understand and provide an emphasis on action items that certain stakeholders can take to dive in further. You want to deliver and identify the delivery tactics. So that could be email or in-person meetings. It could be through Slack. A great tactic for email is Enable Roundup that gives a summary of findings in one view, which can be shared daily or weekly. And then another way to share insights is also in-person meetings. So keep in mind that if it's in person, you might want to do a Q&A. You might want to give, a use case example of, why or where you may need to pivot as an organization. And then lastly, know your audience. So the final deliverable or how you incorporate competitive intelligence might vary across different groups. So sales, might be competitive battle cards, insights from win-loss or product overview. Marketing might be competitive analysis, creating searchable, discoverable content, or your positioning statement, whereas executive leadership might need a high-level analysis or monthly analysis. So lastly, you want to monitor and measure for success. So evaluating the effectiveness really helps you understand how sales perceives your competitive content, its impact on performance. And you'll want to review things like competitive win rates, average sales cycle length, deal size, and total revenue impacted, so you can continue to see where do you need to invest and build your program. One of the most important metrics you can track for CI is win rates and how often you're winning against certain competitors. This information is really critical because it allows you to benchmark and then you can compare on a quarterly basis. And then you'll want, as I mentioned previously, you'll want to continue to monitor and have a good pulse on competitors on an ongoing basis, helps you stay abreast of trends and really build that good foundation of continuing to make sure you're on top of various competitive trends in the market. Okay, so I'm going to go through 3 best practices to wrap up our session today, and examples of how I've used competitive intelligence in past organizations and how I'm using it today. So a great practice to get in the habit of, as I mentioned, is to share insights frequently. So I shared a version of this study in the previous slide, but a study done by Cran recently found that businesses that share competitive intelligence at least once a week are twice as likely to have revenue increases than those who shared less often. So CI is an ongoing process. It's not a one and done tactic. And it's like, as I mentioned, it's been shown to be more effective when it's shared and information shared out frequently. So identify a cadence that works and then use different mediums accordingly. A good use case of this was when this was effective for me is when I was at Robin most recently. We created a competitive intelligence program that saw huge results. We did a combination of win-loss analysis, as well as building out sort of monthly trainings and a weekly roundup of insights that was really frequent and gave the sales team a really great ability to adapt to the insights that we were sharing. And the outcome there was that we were able to increase our competitive win rate by 3% and then also increase overall deal size by 2x. So really exciting movement there. And I think, again, the value of sharing insights has immense value. And then I think another best practice is to utilize multiple tactics for dissemination. So why it matters, it encourages self-learning and can allow for scalability for those of you that are, in smaller startups or at smaller organizations. There's proven efficacy here, and this gives you the opportunity to cater to multiple audiences. So a good use case example here is when I was at Toast, we created and utilized a competitive intelligence, essentially a strategy to increase revenue and enable our sales team on the landscape for a new product line that we were launching. So tactics that we incorporated were battle cards with SWOT analysis, customer win stories and talk tracks, enablement for those battle cards, and competitive feature matrix. And then we created a competitive Slack channel for teams to share resources, learnings, and updates daily. So really the outcome there is we train 60 reps in 1 month and increase our revenue times 3x in 1 quarter. So tons of huge impact there just from really equipping and enabling sales in different capacity and making sure that there were multiple tactics for dissemination. And then one last great best practice is really starting off with internal resources and stakeholders. So again, internal stakeholders are incredibly valuable and are a huge source of information. Your stakeholders internally are, amazing sources of competitive intelligence, and sales reps are often talking with prospects, marketers, customer support, more often than other team members. And so as you really, can lean on them, you can really understand and get a pulse on some of the insights that they've learned. And then other ways to gain knowledge internally are to listen in on sales calls with prospects and customers, review emails and chat messages, view the CRM that you're using, and dive in first before you expand into, external markets. So as I mentioned, at SaltMine, we're in the process of building out our CI program. We've already utilized, sort of that internal knowledge building by sitting in on sales calls, talking to our sales team, and really analyzing data in our CRM. And next will be a sort of, pivot to expand internally and start to, talk to customers, those in industry, to identify our messaging and our positioning statement. So expected outcomes there would be, faster speed to market, quicker learnings, and then having a really crisp positioning statement to differentiate ourselves in the market. Okay, so today we went through a number of things that I was really excited to share with you all. We talked about why competitive intelligence is important in the market today, how to build and use competitive intelligence, and then best practices and use cases that I've come to learn over the course of a number of years. So I wanted to say thank you so much for your time today, and Rose is going to come on and see if you guys have any questions, but really appreciate the time.
Fantastic session, Katie. Thank you so much. There's so many nuggets there for people to dive into, so really appreciate it. Got a couple of questions to run through with you. So the first one is, do you have any advice for starting a competitive intelligence strategy if you are a PMM team of one? I know you referenced kind of it's possible to start as a small team, but yeah, would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I've definitely been in your shoes. So there have definitely been times where I've been a PMM team of one, and I would say when starting, or bootstrapping a competitive intelligence program, I think a good place to start is, as I mentioned, sort of using what internal stakeholders and resources you have available, because those team members can be they can have a leg up in what they know and give you the opportunity to, learn quickly. And then I would say start with win-loss is a great way to gain a ton of insights and information. You can do anything from like 1 to 2 interviews a month. A lot of times customers are chomping at the bit to, share feedback and insights and really just kind of talk about why they are either excited about your product, and then who throughout the, prospect or customer lifecycle they came across, and they'll give you a good, sort of overview on competitors and kind of what they saw. So that's a really good sort of, I would say, quick win that is definitely worth the investment in the time. Because to your point, it can be overwhelming to know where to start, but I would start with those two is generally a good use of time.
Absolutely. And just to round things out, are there any kind of tools or software or anything like that that you have found super useful in your kind of building competitive intelligence strategies that you'd like to recommend?
Yes, I have lots, and I know a couple of, Clue, Crayon. I would say there's a ton out there that if you have the budget to do it, definitely invest in a competitive intelligence software. There's so many opportunities to, gain insights and, have essentially a quick roundup of information as you build out and continue to evolve your competitive intelligence program. So I would say yes, 100%. And then I think sort of again, bootstrap way to get insights is Google Alerts, I think is one as well, to just kind of stay abreast of different competitors that you may come across. But yeah, tons of great tools and technology out there. And there's definitely a number that I did not mention, but definitely research. And if you have the budget, I would totally invest in one.
Amazing. Thanks so much. So thanks again for another great session. Awesome topic, very challenging, but lots of great value nuggets to take away there. So really appreciate your time. Stay tuned, everyone, because we are launching straight back into another panel session. So yeah, we'll be right back. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.